Live with the great Sam Youngman out in California where all the shit's going down. So I had to reach out to you, sir. Great to see you here on whatever the Tuesday, the beginning of the end of the world. Hi.
Hi, it's good to see you.
Thank you for joining me. What happened in Southern California yesterday? The mayor of LA was out reprimanding ICE, who had Fox News like reporters embedded in them. People saw those images. Like, how is that landing out there?
Yeah, people are pissed off. I mean, we're an American city that's being occupied by the U.S. military, and that's bad enough. But the rest of the country doesn't really seem to give a shit, which is pretty disappointing. Karen Bass has taken a lot of crap. She was out of the country, Ted Cruz style, when the fires hit. It's not an easy job managing Los Angeles by any means. But yesterday, if you'll forgive my rhyming, Karen Bass kicked some ass. Fox News, like you said, was embedded with a heavily armed ICE and Customs and Border Patrol unit who went into LA's legendary MacArthur Park. There were kids playing. That's how much of a danger zone it was. We're using the U.S. military now to scare the shit out of American kids. To her great credit, Karen Bass hustled over there, got on the phone, and said, "Y'all need to get the hell out of here." The people of Los Angeles are responding the way you've seen other places respond when they're being occupied by American soldiers. Uh, People are throwing rotten fruit at, armored vehicles. You hear the phrase, "get the fuck out of here," over and over and over again. It lacks that, trademark New York crisp, "get the fuck out of here." But it's still pretty powerful.
Well, it's great to see the community standing up because
Oh, yeah.
you couldn't blame people for being scared to do that. But you think about kids who witness that; they're never going to forget those images of men in fatigues walking across the playground.
Well, I mean, when I was a kid, I looked up at soldiers as heroes. What do you think these kids are going to look at? They're some scary occupying force that's the enemy. It's not somebody, I always think about Madeleine Albright used to talk about, seeing soldiers and the American flag when we liberated Europe. And it's just amazing to me how much we are running in the opposite direction to not just squander that reputation, but to make Americans actively fear and dislike the troops almost as much as Trump does.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, no, that's a really important point. The way that to see the American troops, people talk about. I was talking to Glenn Kirshner yesterday and legal experts about whether or not in the history of American military intervention or conflicts taking orders that aren't lawful. And he focused on the My Lai massacre in Vietnam. But like all of our examples seem to be in foreign lands, like American soldiers taking orders from their leaders in America to invade and kidnap people in America. That seems like new unless you watched it on a movie.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, we used to use the FBI to, go after black civil rights leaders. This is an escalation, no question. Don't get me wrong. I think the FBI is probably still doing some pretty creepy shit.
Yeah.
But the truly terrifying thing is what we're seeing. I think is just the beginning. Now that ICE has more money than the damn Marine Corps, they're not concerned. They're not worried about getting in trouble with the boss because the boss wants them to be, brutal. Um, they're building all these prisons. They got to fill them with somebody. They've been lying forever that there were 20 million immigrants who came to the country when Biden was president. We know that number's closer to a million. So who are they going to put in these prisons?
I mean,
And when do I go?
it's it's such an important point. They're building these prisons everywhere. They got to put somebody in them. That kind of landed hard on me because it's exactly what is happening now. What about in LA where there's supposed to be like almost a million undocumented people? I'm sure they're all there mostly working. And at what point does that start to affect small businesses, restaurants, et cetera, in Southern California? I mean, I hear that these folks are there and they're hiding. They're not showing up at construction sites. They're not showing up in the fields and any number of other jobs that are the quote essential workers in America. When do you start to see an effect? Are you seeing an effect? What are you hearing?
Yeah, I think we're already there. I think you're starting to me, the most pronounced thing I'm noticing. The thing about LA is we love the immigrant community. it's part of this city's DNA. When I'm at the beach going to surf, there's a fruit vendor, I say hi to every morning. He hasn't been there. It's sort of like all of a sudden you notice there are no birds singing. That's how what I would compare it to. There's just an
Mm.
absence of music, festivity, these cultural contributions that immigrants, especially the Mexican American community, brings to this city. It's just been kind of quieted down. And, it's such a strange dichotomy. On the one hand, you've got people just going about their regular business because LA is massive. Like, I haven't seen any troops in my neighborhood, but there are so many people who are hiding, who are afraid. Um, it's it's infuriating. I'll
Yeah.
tell you. It's just it really makes you realize just how much bullshit you were fed growing up about America being a melting pot, and you know the idea that they want legal immigrants here, just not the illegal immigrants. It's horse shit. They're going after everybody.
Oh God, I both love and hate to hear you talk about it because you're so passionate about it and so real about it, but also it's just so tragic. And like you said, I think it's important that we recognize we're probably just at the beginning. I want to ask you about the big piece of legislation there as well, but just one more question, I think, on the immigrant community there
Yeah.
and what this means for folks. I mean, how do you think it's being interpreted by media? And you said, because at the beginning there, like, it doesn't seem like people care. Like,
Yeah.
do we not care until it comes to our neighborhood, until it comes to our communities? And even then, especially if we're white liberals and life is pretty good, I mean, I don't know, I'm going to go out in the street and stand between ICE and their snatchings of these people, their
Sure.
kidnappings.
Yeah, I mean, not caring until it affects you personally is the American way, right? Um, although I will say, in defense of
Yes.
white liberals, I have seen a lot of people out there on the streets protesting, marching, who don't have any skin in the game. Although, personally, I think we all have skin in the game. Eventually, it's going to come for us all. If
Yes.
there's nobody to work those fields, then we're going to starve. Like, this idea that immigrants are some expendable part of America is ridiculous. Like, we are dependent on them. Um, I, I think it is going to get worse. The thing about living in LA is nobody covers us well. Like, East Coast media are like famously bad at covering LA. It's they might as well be covering the moon. I was watching CNN when the Marines first got here, and this British reporter's running around just hysterical. And he's like, "You can smell weed in the air." It's like, buddy, is this your first day here? Because you can always smell weed in the air. It's our perfume. And I just, this idea that the news media is trying to sell Americans that LA is in chaos and needs the troops here, again, absolute bullshit. This has to be what it feels like to live in some place like in the Middle East when you're watching all these news reports about what a threat you are, and you're just trying to go about your daily life. It's a damn strange thing to turn on TV and see people lying about where you live.
That's really important question then. What about the, like, all the, you mentioned the like cultural festivities and kind of you stop hearing the birds singing metaphor, but I've been reading about like the sports the stadiums, including the Dodgers baseball, but there's like soccer teams out there, I think, that a lot of these folks will go to. Certainly we understand how big that is in all of Latin America. And I wonder if you have any insight or experience on what's going on with the sporting events, and because that's also a huge boost to any economy. That's why they have sports that are professional, so they can make money. So
Yeah.
what are you hearing about the Dodgers or any of the other Southern or any California teams and how they're handling it?
Yeah, I mean, the Dodgers is such an unusual situation in that, at least 40% of their fan base is Hispanic. The Dodgers, got their start, in Chavez Ravine, excuse me, not got their start, but, that's where the stadium is. People were displaced to build a stadium there. The Dodgers owe a lot to the Latin community, and I'm not sure they have made that clear. Of course, there was the sort of the thing that went viral where they sort of booted ICE out of their parking lot, and we know one of Stephen Miller's groups is going after them now. But they told a young singer who performed the national anthem in Spanish that she wasn't welcome back. I would say the Latin community here is very unhappy that the Dodgers haven't gone further, considering just how much they rely on the immigrant community. Um, the soccer part I think is really interesting because you do have, LAFC is so popular here. Their supporter group is amazing. You go to a game and you end up watching them instead of what's happening on the field because they're so engaged, they're so passionate, they're so musical. There are empty seats now. People are afraid to go places where they think there might be ice. If you're on any of these kinds of apps like Nextdoor, stuff like that, you're seeing ice warnings from regular citizens all day long. Don't go to this corner. Don't go to this street because there's going to be ice there. So yeah, no, I think if the goal is to destroy the LA economy, it's working.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad we talked about Southern California and this issue. It does seem to be one of the most important issues facing us. Obviously, there's this horrific disaster in Texas as well, but you cover all of this at your daily newsletter and on Substack. You guys do a great job. And I got to ask you about this bill that passed in the middle of the night without anybody reading it. It's going to affect all of our lives. And I guess you could start with the budgeting of ICE, taking from the poor, giving to the rich. We've heard the narrative. It's true. It matters. A lot of people are focused on Medicaid. A lot of people are focused on debt and deficit that it creates. A lot of people focused on the billions that the stormtroopers are getting. But what are your thoughts, any, and what you've read, heard, and feel about this horrific piece of legislation?
Right. Well, I mean, it's sort of like Trump himself in that there's so much horrible shit happening at once. It's hard to focus on just one part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, the funding for ICE could fundamentally change who we are as a country. Stormtroopers is the perfect word. Basically, Trump has his own branch of the military now just to go after people in this country, including American citizens. The Medicaid stuff is shocking. The Medicare stuff is shocking. I just saw that there are tax breaks if you want to buy a private jet. So congratulations to the 17 people who can afford a new private jet. I guess my concern is, one, are the American people going to realize what's just been done to them? And two, are they going to give a shit? I think a lot of us went into the last election thinking that the overturning of Roe v. Wade was going to be a massive motivator. And ultimately, a lot of people just seem to forget about it, or they just didn't care, or it just wasn't affecting them directly. I worry about the same thing with this. These guys are idiots, but they're not idiots. They pushed the Medicaid cuts to after the midterms. That doesn't happen by accident.
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, we've got our work cut out for us to tell people what the hell this thing does, and we've got to do a hell of a lot better job than we did when Biden was in office.
Yeah, no, all really good points. And the worst of the legislation doesn't necessarily impact people until the midterm elections. I mean, I'd argue that the overturning of Roe v. Wade definitely had a huge effect, and probably more than anything in the midterm elections in 2018 when Democrats got back the House. But I feel like now the question I want to ask you and all the smart people I get to talk to is, what do you think about the midterm elections and the likelihood that they are normal, free, fair, not rigged, postponed potentially? Sorry, it's a snow day. We're just there's a lot of things, there's a lot happening. We're just very busy. There's an invasion, martial law, no elections.
I mean, I think it's amazing how similar that is to Dr. Evil. Look, I think a good rule of thumb when it comes to Trump is that if he can cheat, he will. We know that about him.
Yeah.
What I know about the American people is they're not going to just give up their elections without a fight. You mentioned our newsletter, which I appreciate, by the way. You've always been such a big supporter. Every day we start our newsletter with the countdown, the number of days left until the midterms.
Yep.
And the most common comment we get is, some variation of, why are you counting down to the midterms? What do you really think we're going to have free and fair elections? And my answer to that is, we fucking better, because I'm not ready to just roll over and give that shit up. I don't know how Trump will try to cheat. I know that he will. But I also know that we're not going to take that lying down. That's bedrock stuff. I mean, if we lose that, we've lost everything. To me, the reason I'm anti-violence is because I live in a country where you can settle your differences at the ballot box.
Right.
If that's no longer true, then I'm not sure what to tell people.
Yeah, no, really important point. Thealtmedia.com, by the way, if you're not subscribed, that's the best thing to say. Place to go.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, really, really good stuff. What else? Anything else about this big bad bill, the way it was passed, what it means?
Yeah.
you know,
Congratulations to Lisa Murkowski for being the deciding vote and destroying Planned Parenthood. That's got to feel good. I wonder how many women she killed with that vote. And I've seen a lot of people saying, "Why are you singling out Murkowski?" It's really simple because she pretended to be a moderate. She
mm,
pretended like she cared about a lot of this shit that she turned around and sold out. I know who Ted Cruz is. I know how he's voting. It's the people who pretend to be something else that I'm out of patience with. Susan Collins voted against this probably because they didn't need her vote. If they needed it, I'm sure she would have come around. Um, I'm disgusted. I will say I was enormously proud, and you don't hear me saying kind words about Democratic leadership very often, but I thought they did a really good job of keeping their people on the same team.
mm,
Even John Fetterman's bitch ass, complaining about having to go to work every day. That poor baby. He even managed to vote no, despite complaining about not being able to go to the beach. And then in the House, you saw, I think, real opposition. You saw a real fight.
yeah.
Look, I want to see more from these people too, but at the end of the day, we have some mathematical realities we are bumping up against, namely that we don't control shit. If we want to change that, if we want to start throwing some real punches, then we've got to win something.
Really good points. The other, I mean, I just keep thinking about Larry Summers' comment on ABC's This Week because I don't like Larry Summers. He's always wrong. He's not a guy who is particularly progressive. He's a Democrat. He's Treasury Secretary for Obama. I think he did a lot of bad things. He made a lot of economic forecasts that didn't come true. And the way that he talks about them with the kind of confidence is also ridiculous. And he's just an elitist prick that I don't like. But on ABC This Week, he basically said this mega bill is a shameful act by our Congress and that people are going to die as a result of it. It's like, did Larry Summers, of all people, predict that people will die as a result of these cuts to healthcare? So if Larry Summers is saying that, then the rest of us, our predictions don't seem so hyperbolic or exaggerated. I mean, people are going to die. I mean, people are dying as a result of the cuts to USAID, but we don't care about them because they're poor and they're not even American. But we definitely don't care about poor Americans. But it's not just poor Americans; it's working Americans, middle class Americans. I mean, all poor people are working harder than anybody, but it's people that should definitely not be losing health care and are working hard. They're going to die.
Yeah, they're going to die. That is correct. I'm with you. I really hate to be seen agreeing with Larry Summers because he's just the absolute scum of the earth. Same with Elon. I don't want to agree with Elon, but when they trash this bill, they're actually getting something right. And it's that meme of the worst person just made an excellent point.
Yeah.
I think the reason you're seeing so many good people and assholes come together to condemn this thing is because it just sucks that bad. I think all but the most diehard Kool-Aid drinkers are telling you how bad this thing is going to be. I mean, it's the largest transfer of wealth we've ever seen in this country. It's the largest cut of Medicaid we've ever seen in this country. It's the largest cut of nutrition benefits we've ever seen in this country. It's basically a declaration of war against the poor and the middle class.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. Those people are already having a hard enough time as it is.
Yes.
The whole fucking election was about how the costs are too high. Everything Trump has done since taking office has only made that worse. And this will too, because this has become a government for, of, and by the super rich. And the rest of us are just screwed.
So well said. Yes, the rest of us. I mean, this bill makes so many people's lives much harder, and the people whose lives it makes better, it doesn't make them much better. It doesn't even make them necessarily noticeably better. It's just as long as they're better than us. It's a real haves and have-nots. I mean, it's a classic tale. It seems.
Yeah. No, it is. And I tell you the thing that I find so frustrating is, for all his faults, Joe Biden was laser focused on rebuilding the post-pandemic economy from the middle out, with a heavy focus on the middle class, on returning manufacturing jobs, on making sure working people were finally getting a goddamn break. And Trump has undone all of that just to focus on the billionaires in his cabinet. And it's just, if we as a country don't start figuring out real damn quick the difference between the good shit and the bad shit, then we may just be too dumb to live.
Yeah, God. Well, that's for sure. For a lot of us. But the thing that makes me so mad, frustrated, and scared is that the fact that we have the future of our economy, there would be a lot of jobs, and there are always jobs in energy. And the future of energy is renewable energy. And certainly there'll always be jobs in fossil fuels during our lifetime, unfortunately, but there likely will be. But the rest of the world is going to invest in the future of energy and those jobs, while America is investing in the past. Now, it's not obviously the economics of it all is the least important thing, because the planet is melting as a result of burning fossil fuels. And yet we are disincentivizing with this bill investments in renewable energy. Not only that, penalizing anything in renewable energy and investing in coal rocks. Coal
Yeah.
rocks. That's
It's it's always seemed a little on the nose to me that our delusional president is literally tilting at windmills.
yeah,
Uh, it's he was lying about China's wind power again today, and the thing is he has to lie about it because China is looking at the future. China is building for their people. We're not. We're going backwards. Trump has said it many times. He wants us to have the economy of the 1800s, and he's working very hard to
yeah,
do that.
yeah,
But let's also not forget, oil and gas are his buddies. The coal people help fund his campaign. I mean,
yeah.
these are people that hang out at Mar-a-Lago. He's not worried about the rest of us. He doesn't give a shit. But this just laser focus on wind power is just the dumbest damn thing I've ever seen. Yeah, no, it's self-destructive. It's as if America voted to take a shotgun and shoot off both its own feet. I mean, it's just I, it's maddening to watch. Really,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
that's one of the big themes of our newsletter is that you're not losing your mind. You're not crazy. They are. Because it's so easy to watch this shit and feel like you're losing your mind, especially when you're being gaslit every day by the US federal government. And it's easy to wonder, am I the crazy one here? Am I the one losing my mind? No, you're not. People are out, the people are out to actively trying to kill you. You're right to be concerned about that.
Yeah. That's why your newsletter is so important. That's why my podcast and the community I have is so important, to remind people that you are not losing it. You are not alone, and to think that there should be a new cartoon depicting American patriotism, a picture of old Uncle Sam stepping on his own dick.
Yeah, I don't think Uncle Sam's dick is long enough for that. But yes, it's if anything, I think we've made it very clear that nationally we are concerned of our adequacy.
Uncle Sam thinks his dick is that long. That's for sure. It's hubris.
Yeah, I do have nieces and nephews, so I am technically an Uncle Sam. I don't know that I like this convergence of
And
names.
you did once have a dick injury that was your own fault, which is getting too close to home, I suppose. I'm sorry about that.
I
It was fireworks, improv.
oh God, I was sitting here racking my brain like, man, I've been hurt a lot. I don't remember that one though. Yeah, I should have known you were bullshitting me.
The fireworks injury. Two more quick ones. I'm
Yeah.
obsessed with and can't look away from this Epstein thing. Is
Hmm.
it important or is it not? Because we both try to editorially cover issues that impact people's lives
Hmm.
in a real way, and not be distracted by, the controversy of the day or the P Diddy.
Yeah.
But this would seem to be important. I have, because I'm looking at it maybe too much, I'm watching all of the biggest MAGA influencers losing their mind. And then today, Trump was asked a legitimate question about it. And he's like, I can't believe with the time you get to ask a question, that's the question you ask. And yet it seems like the only question on MAGA's mind. Does this mean anything in terms of, what is your reaction to them saying there's no list?
Yeah, Trump seems scared, doesn't he? It's I'll tell you, when they dropped that, when they gave it to Axios Sunday night, that there was no client list and all that bullshit, my first thought was, it is really soulless to try and use the Texas tragedy to obscure this news dump. And again, that was just a hunch. And then when Trump reacted today, I can't believe you're asking about this, when the Texas floods happened,
Yeah.
it became very obvious to me he was trying to use that as a shield. He knows this is dangerous because his base believes there's a cover up. Does it matter? Yeah, I think it does. There were a lot of victims. And I think a lot of people, myself included, were sick of watching rich people get away with shit. We're sick of watching rich people cover up for other rich people while the rest of us pay taxes, go to jail if we break the law. And I think there's got to be this growing sense in America that The Mar-a-Lago crowd is doing all kinds of creepy shit, and they are covering it up now that they've got the White House. So yeah, I think it's important. I do. I don't think, I often hear people say, "Oh, this is a distraction," or "This is a distraction." I think it's all important. It's not. I don't think we have the luxury of just ignoring shit. It's all bad. Um, and
Yeah,
yeah, and if nothing else, I like seeing how angry it makes Trump to talk about. So yeah, let's keep
yeah.
talking about it.
I know it's just stupid to even bring up, but to talk about why MAGA believes what it believes. At this point, it's not like I'm talking to them or trying to convince them, but
Yeah.
I think a lot about what somebody put together, just a collage of videos and pictures of Trump depicting Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And it was a couple pictures and videos and like appearances I hadn't even seen. Like these guys were close, knew each other
Close.
well. Apparently, Jeffrey Epstein had like 10 numbers affiliated with Donald Trump and his people. They spent a lot of time together. And I just always wonder why that doesn't matter to the Trump supporter who cares about all things Jeffrey Epstein. Can you explain? Can
Yeah,
you
I
speak to
mean,
that?
a judge literally said that Trump is a rapist, and they didn't care about that either. I mean, I think at the core of MAGA is misogyny and racism, right? So, I mean, deep down, I don't think they actually give a shit. They only care if they think Bill Clinton's on the list, right? Yeah, there is a long trail of Trump and Epstein stuff. I always go back to the quote that Trump gave when he said, "Oh yeah, Epstein's a good friend of mine. They say he likes women as much as I do, except maybe a little on the younger side." What the fuck? Where are the follow-up questions saying, "What did you know and when did you know it?" I mean, to me, that's the thing that cracks me up about the people like Rogan. They see a conspiracy everywhere, except where there's actually a goddamn conspiracy right in
Ah,
front of their
right. Yes,
face.
so well said.
Like,
Yes.
if
Yep.
you want to get away with something, do it in Joe Rogan's front yard. He'll never see it. He will never pick up on it. He's way too busy on the dark web, trying to figure out why, Coca-Cola makes his dick small. I'm telling you, these guys couldn't catch a conspiracy theory if it was biting them in the ass.
Hey, is that true about Coca-Cola?
I don't think so.
Hmm.
But,
Moving on.
just to be on the
Final
safe side, maybe switch to
diet.
diet.
Diet. Final one I want to ask you. I hadn't seen your reactions to Mamdani. I feel like that's the kind of story that gets, flash and everything we have going on. But I feel like it's a really important story to talk about the fact that a socialist guy who describes himself as a socialist, a guy who's not, bought and paid for by the Israeli lobby, a guy who is a real progressive, and a guy who ran on a pretty interesting campaign of things that would make people's lives better. One, in a city where there's more people than a lot of states, a diverse city. What do you think it means for Democrats? What do you think it means, period? I didn't get any of your reactions to that. I didn't go far enough back in my prep today.
Yeah. No, I think it's exciting. I think it means good things for Democrats if they're willing to get out of their own way and look at why he's doing well. One, candidates matter. Candidates who are personable, who can talk to voters where they live, who can smile. I was watching his new ad this morning, and I was just like, oh, he actually likes New York and people who live there. How revolutionary. I have been disappointed to see so many Democrats helping Republicans smear this guy. As much as I've dug in, I've never found any real evidence of the shit he's accused of. To me, if we're going to say after an election, we need young men and we need young people, we can't turn around and say, no, not like that. We have to be grateful for the shit that gets us excited. We
Yeah.
should be taking notes. I was talking about how people are sick of getting screwed over by rich people. The people that voted for Mamdani are sick of getting screwed over by rich people.
Yes.
He's talking about rent stabilization. Again, not rent control, rent stabilization. He's talking about making bus fare free. He's talking about making the subway more accessible. He's talking about actually doing what Trump pretends to do, which is help working people who are having a hard time. If you want to know why everybody's freaking out, including the jackals in the ivory tower over at the New York Times, it's because he actually gives a shit about working people and they don't.
I think I'll end it there. You're a machine. You're a machine of
Yeah,
thoughtful.
yeah, I'm a bullshit machine. That's
No, not at all. You're a machine of thoughtful, nuanced, sharp,
and I'm
humored.
so red. I look like I'm auditioning for the Trump cabinet.
Have you been out in the sun a lot surfing? Is that why?
Yeah, I was out this morning, as a matter of fact. So yeah, I'm looking a little Trumpy today.
Well, at least that's a weird thing too. That I was saying to somebody the other day. I was like, It's weird that we don't every day, as long as he's in our life, think first and foremost about him. Not that he's a rapist or anything. That when he gets up, he colors himself a different color. It's weird. That's not the only that we don't. We should start every conversation just reacting to the fact that the man sprays himself. Because I don't know any men. I honestly don't know any men who color their skin at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, if Joe Biden showed up one day with bright orange face and white ears, I feel like somebody would ask about it. It's it's funny. I was thinking about this the other day. Like, of all the childhood parables we heard when we were kids, the one I could have never imagined living through is the Emperor's New Clothes. Like, this guy walks around all day long with his tiny pecker hanging out, and nobody notices it. The New York Times is like, man, good pants. And it's just, the rest of us are left here losing our damn minds, wondering if we're the only people who see this shit.
Let me set you up for one more hot take,
Sure.
which I have. I was just watching. I was looking at your Blue Sky feed, and you shared, I think, these weird moments at a cabinet secretary meeting. The Trump had all his cabinet meeting today, and so on the frame you see Rubio on his right and Hegseth on his left, and Trump's going off on the tangents that he goes off, and he's talking about the interior decorating and whether gold looks good or not, and asks the cabinet to vote on whether or not he should make this or that gold. My question to you is, you've been covering Marco Rubio for a long time. The guy was a serious guy. He seemed principled, at least in his beliefs on foreign policy and tax policy, et cetera,
Yeah.
Republican orthodoxy. What do you think when you see him next to Trump just acting crazy like that? Because I know Rubio doesn't allow his face. He looks very serious. But I think he is the hollowest of all the barrels in the cabinet, because he at one point did seem to stand for things I totally disagreed with, but he was somewhat consistent on. This dude got made fun of by Trump, told him that he had a small dick in front of all of America. And he sits there right next to him while the emperor has knuckles, while his dick is out, and he just sits there. What do you think he's thinking? What do you think about him?
Oh, I think he's dead inside. I think his soul died and crawled out of his ass. I think that's how hollow's a great word for it, I think.
Yeah.
Rubio was the chair of Senate Intel when they issued the report on Trump and Russian collusion. Rubio, and it did not say Trump is innocent. Rubio knows better than anybody what a disaster Trump is. But hey, he wants a career in Republican politics, so he's going
Yeah.
to kiss as much ass as he has to. I mean, that's what all these guys are doing. The idea that any of them are principled is just out the window. Their only principle is, how do I get Daddy Trump to like me?
Yeah. There's news today that apparently some AI, some digital voice was pretending to be Rubio calling foreign leaders and foreign secretaries. And I was thinking, how is it any different than, it must be easy to digitize Rubio because he's just a droid already. He's just a
He's so robotic. Yeah, he's made out of metal. He's not a human. It's the thing I think about Rubio is he spent all those years railing against dictatorships under Castro, and now I can't help but think, was he just mad that he didn't get to kiss Castro's ass? Is that the deal breaker there?
Do you think Ted Cruz should have to tell us ahead of time when he's going on vacation?
Yes, I did. That was the opening to our newsletter today. Is that if Trump is going to destroy all the National Weather Service forecasting tools, then our new system is called the "Oh shit, Ted Cruz is making a run for it" system. And basically, anytime you see Ted Cruz heading to the airport, you got to haul ass away because something bad's happening. Do you remember the movie The Great Outdoors?
Yep.
Do you remember the guy who got struck by lightning 66 times? And the bartender's like, yeah, if you ever see old Reg heading for the hills, then you should do the same. That's the way I feel about Ted Cruz. If you see Ted Cruz heading to a nice vacation spot, then get the fuck out of there, because something bad's coming.
Love it. Love you. Thank you very much. You're the best, pal. I appreciate it.
Dude, you're the best. Thank you.
I'm hitting end. Thanks for watching, everybody. Appreciate you stopping by live. This will be on the podcast tomorrow. Go subscribe to Sam at thealtmedia.com. Follow me